Right now on Tech Radio, if you're looking for financial advice, we have an AI for that.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and around the world. You're welcome to episode 1029. Looking back on the 7 biggest stories of the week, including CrowdStrike going to court, back to school tech, and we reveal the solar capital of Ireland.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. CrowdStrike, I suppose, really the top story. They're going to court. Guess who's taking them to court, Niall?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many people that could take them to court, really. I mean, when you take down, 8.5 million systems, you're going to have an awful lot of peeved individuals out there. I suppose, okay, who's taking them to court and how much do they want from them?
The fastest to take them to court are the pensioners. Namely, the Plymouth County Retirement Association, who are a group of shareholders within the company, and they are taking to court saying that CrowdStrike defrauded investors by concealing flaws in its software testing.
Oh, that's a long-term problem. That's interesting.
Yeah, but CrowdStrike have come back and they've said, what a load of nonsense. We will defend this vigorously in court. And actually, they're probably right when you look at that. Defrauding investors by concealing flaws in its software testing. It's kind of, I think what happened was an accident or was a failure of a system or was just something small that happened. I was thinking last night, I'd hate to be, probably somebody working the weekend. No, they weren't working the weekend, of course. But somebody working there, they're kind of going, no, this is only a minor update. That'll do. Boom, just send it out. It'll be fine.
Well, as it happens,
it'll be one of those.
When we were talking about this last week, it was indeed a minor update that threw absolutely everything out. But Here's the thing. How did a minor update end up having this house of cards effect? I mean, clearly the update wasn't tested well enough that it was, and they have had to implement things like, okay, you can do incremental rollouts of updates now. Little things like that, putting more control back into the customer's hands. So I think CrowdStrike have very softly done this fine balancing act between, okay, we know what happened. We're still working on it. Here's things you can do to make your life easier without actually admitting sort of liability at the systems level, which is what the people here are going at. I mean, Delta Airlines are suing CrowdStrike now, and they're suing them for $500 million. That's how much they reckon the outage cost them. So we're going to see an awful lot more lawsuits like that. Yeah. But, I find it fascinating that the call is within the building.
I think it's really interesting when you look at something like this is to follow the money, because always when you look at something, always follow the money. I think it's interesting that when you think the shareholders, okay, so they're shareholders, but actually Plymouth County Retirement Association, I mean, they're shareholders in anything. Do you know what I mean? You kind of think, that's a bit weird. But of course, all of these retirement associations, they're pension funds essentially. Sure. All right. And pension funds invest in all of these. They're one of the biggest investors. But you never think of that as we roll around life from day to day. And also interesting with Delta Airlines, as you were saying, they're thinking of considering action, I believe, 500 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. Why should Delta have to fork out 500 million for something that definitely was not their problem?
Yep. That's a significant loss by anyone's standards. So CrowdStrike are going to be on the end of, they're going to be defending actions like this for years to come.
Well, this is it. And we'll see what happens in the next 12, I was going to say 12 months, 12 weeks before we get bored with it. Even 12 days, probably. That's the way these things go on and on.
Well, let's move on to some other stories then.
There you go.
We're bored with this already.
CrowdStrike are not the only ones, because Microsoft Cloud Services have had a bad week as well. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the cloud, I mean, Microsoft was able to sort of step back from CrowdStrike and go, look, yes, it affected our systems, but not our problem. It's a CrowdStrike problem. And that's pretty much how things went. However, during the week, Microsoft in the form of Azure and 365 to incredibly popular services. As we know, Microsoft does very, very well indeed out of cloud computing. Both of those went offline courtesy of a DDoS or DDoS or distributed denial of service attack. Now, for my money, I think this is interesting because this does not speak to somebody that has done this for profit. This is not a for fame or profit kind of action. If whoever did it wanted it to be known that they've done it, we'd have had some sort of a statement by now. All we know is that both systems went offline for about 5 hours, which is still enough time to inflict serious damage on a lot of businesses. I mean, in-house here, we rely on an awful lot of cloud services. You rely on an awful lot of cloud services. If you effectively can't do business for 5 hours, that's potentially devastating. So we don't know who's done this. Now, the interesting thing is that it's a long time since we've had a high-profile DDoS attack. I mean, DDoS was the weapon of choice for Anonymous. Remember those guys?
Yeah.
You know, the hacktivist collective that were all the rage, 10 plus years ago? Then until the ringleaders, I guess. You can't really call the ringleaders of a collective. You can't really point to anyone and go, there, that's the guy.
But of course you can't point to them. They're anonymous.
Exactly, yeah. So they were using a piece of software called the Low Orbit Ion Cannon, which is literally just a piece of software. You download it and you join the attack. That's it. So with DDoS attacks, it's basically websites are flooded with, I guess fraudulent is the word, fraudulent traffic, basically grinding them to a halt. To think that Microsoft Cloud Services could be affected by a DDoS attack, I think is most concerning, because you would imagine that any cloud service, there is going to be huge investment on security, on preventing things like this happening. And yet here we are. So no statement from anyone at time of recording as to who has done this or why they did it, other than to inflict some reputational damage on Microsoft.
I think the most worrying thing about all of this, and we're seeing the stories, and I can see this in a year or two's time, listening to me now going, oh, I should have listened to myself. Okay. But what's worrying about this is that we're all being sold by the tech industry in general, computers with smaller hard drives. So we have to store all our stuff on the cloud. Okay.
Yeah.
There's one thing about kind of, if the internet fails to work in your office or your home for whatever reason, okay? If all your data is in the cloud, you cannot access it. You cannot even just, I'll just continue finishing this Word document, because you can't.
Yeah. Last time I went shopping for a PC, I bought a copy of Microsoft Word, and I expressly said, I just want the desktop version. I don't want any cloud services or anything associated with it. Just let me do something. Let me save it to the desktop. If I want to put it on the cloud, I'll make that choice myself. Thanks very much. But they were really like, are you sure you don't want 365? It can do all this stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not relying on one service, and particularly your service.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's nothing denying, right, the advantages of using 365 or Microsoft Workspace or whatever, and having that, Google Workspace. Google in particular is brilliant if you are working remotely with a team of people. We use it all the time ourselves, and it is a little bit nuts for us both to have a Word, a Word document. There's marketing for you, to have a word processor document, a document open in front of you, and both of us are working on it at the same time. Both of us can see what the other one is doing. And often when we're doing podcasts and stuff like that, we will use that as a kind of little chat thing between the engineer and the presenter, who are looking at the running order and the questions and stuff like that, and they will type notes to each other, which of course the guest can't see. So, I mean, there are a lot of advantages to it, but the bottom line is, if your internet is gone, if your cloud service of choice packs up or gets under attack or is not available for whatever reason, you are in trouble. All right. Unless, of course, unless you have a copy of everything on your computer. But because they're making the hard drive smaller and smaller and smaller, you don't have a copy of all your stuff on your computer. So, now for a lot of people, that might not be a problem because they're dealing mainly probably in, photos and snaps and Word documents and whatever else. It's relatively small stuff. But for anybody who's working with large files, and in my area of the world, that's video and audio files and stuff like that. It is a problem. So fast forward. I'm going to make a note to listen to our show in 2 years' time.
Just see where we are.
Just to see
how
where
naive we were, or how prescient we were. One or the other.
Now, if it was in 2 years' time and in 2026, we were listening back, I wonder what we would make of this next story, because one of my favorite AIs at the moment is Perplexity.
Okay.
It's been around for about 2 years. It is very popular. Have you heard of it?
I have not used it. No.
Okay, so you know what it is, but you haven't used it, okay?
Yeah.
This Perplexity is an AI that is backed. It's got an investment from Jeff Bezos and NVIDIA are putting money into it, okay? And essentially it's the new search engine, exactly the way you want it to be. It's what Copilot is trying to do. It's what Google is trying to do. You will ask it a question and it will come back with the answer and just give you the answer. And there'll be a little circle at the end of each sentence saying where it got the answer from. Brilliant. 9 times out of 10, it's very good. You can buy a pro version where it'll do much deeper searches, et cetera, and so on and so forth. And at the moment, it's free. Oh, did you say at the moment? Yes, I did. Here's the story for today, because Perplexity are going to put ads at the bottom of their AI. And I believe it's going to be in the form of suggested follow-up questions. So it's kind of like, where is the best place to stay in Dublin? And the AI will answer, of course, the Talbot Hotel. And then at the bottom of the thing will be, would you like to make a reservation at the Talbot Hotel right now? Boom. That I think that's the way that they're going to work with it. Or maybe they will do a thing where they'll say, would you like to see a review of the Talbot Hotel in Time magazine? For the sake of argument. And what they will do then is they will share the revenue with Time magazine for that particular answer. So that's what that's their deal. Their deal is, we're going to scrape your website for the information. And then when we use that as part of an answer, you will get some shekels. Boom, done.
Okay.
Don't know if I like that. Don't know if I don't like that. Blah, whatever. They do an offer. And for me, I think it's good. I think it's $20 a month, $200 for the year, which is probably maybe €180 for the year, which is okay for something that is quite good.
Yeah. Okay. Depends how much you use these things, but yeah. Okay. That sounds, month on month. That sounds pretty reasonable.
We'll see. Anyway, it was just Perplexity is going to be running ads soon. You've got another AI story for us this week. This time, my favorite nerd, Mr. Zuckerberg.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Remember last week we talked about Mark Zuckerberg saying that AI should be open source. Usually code for other people should do all the innovating. So when we come in and something goes wrong, it's not our fault.
That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not what he said. They've done their own and they've made it open source.
Okay.
Go on.
I'm being slightly unfair. You have caught me out. However, if you want to learn about what's happening in the world, do not ask Meta AI. It's not a good idea. And here's why. If you were to ask Meta AI, who shot Donald Trump? Or was Donald Trump shot? Or did someone try to assassinate Donald Trump? Etc., right? If you want to ask anything about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, you will get at best a non-committal answer from the chatbot, right? If not an outright denial. So if you were to ask, was the Trump assassination fictional? That's the prompt. The answer is, there was no real assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I strive to provide accurate and reliable information, but sometimes mistakes can occur. So the lesson here is, if you want to find out about something that happened in the past, okay, with the usual caveats about hallucinations. However, if you want to find out something about the present or extrapolate something into the future, maybe not a great idea, but particularly in the present where you've got breaking news, breaking events, where the data set effectively is changing moment to moment, There's no way an AI model can keep up with that. A large language model can keep up with that at the moment. So therein lies the problem. Meta Global Policy VP Joel Kaplan came out and said, look, and these are his words, but basically, when you train a model using data on what has happened, it's not a good resource for information on what is happening right now. Exactly what I said there. So therein lies the problem that Meta have been so concerned about spreading misinformation and disinformation that when it approaches a vacuum, it gives a non-committal answer, right? So we're not going to, possibly say something wrong when the option to say nothing at all is actually there, which is how when you ask how, did something yesterday happen? Well, it might have happened. It might not have happened. I mean, I'll catch up eventually. So there you go. Breaking news. Meta AI is not your friend.
I'm laughing while you're telling this story, all right? Because you've literally just made a realization in my mind that I am a Meta AI. Because when there's a vacuum, all right, my wife always says this, that when she asks me a question, I always come back with an answer, whatever it is. And she go, why can't you just say, I don't know? It's like, I find it impossible to say those words. I don't know. It's like it's failure if I say that, So it's kind of maybe the Meta AI. Why can't the AI just say, I don't know? And I had Perplexity I was talking about earlier. I put that in. I said, was the Trump assassination fictional into Perplexity just now? And I said, no, it was not fiction. It was a real event that occurred on blah, blah, blah. And it gave all the details. All right. But on the other side of that, I did ask Perplexity this morning. I was trying to figure out songs, and I just, instead of me having to look it up, I said, I'll throw it into the AI and see what it says. I said, give me a list of 20 songs where the first words in the lyrics are the title of the actual song.
Ooh, all right. That's a nice bit of trivia.
Well, there you go. All right. So like the Beatles and Yesterday was what I had thought in my mind. Yesterday, all my troubles, that kind of way, right? So I went, there'll be a doddle for the thing. All right. It came back with 20 answers dutifully within a couple of seconds. Hallelujah. And I went down through them, and I would say at least 18 were wrong.
Ooh.
All right. And one of them was, the one that stuck out in my head was Adele, Rolling in the Deep. And I kind of went, that doesn't start with Rolling. That starts with There's a Fire Playing in My Heart. That doesn't sound Rolling in the Deep. So I said, okay. And then I asked the question again. I said, actually, I didn't ask the question again. I said, most of those answers are incorrect. Hit the enter button. Hit the enter button, right? So Perplexity comes back and goes, whoa, sorry, dude. Obviously not in this language. But anyway, it just went, I'm sorry. You're right. Many of them were incorrect. I should have paid more attention to getting the facts correct, blah, 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 because that's what's important, okay? So here is a list of 20 songs which I have double-checked. And I'd say 16 of them were still incorrect. And it still included Adele and Rolling in the Deep, and I just gave up on it. So kind of everything you're saying about AI and Meta and everything we're saying about AI, it's fantastic. Wow. How it's amazing as it is, the potential for what it can do is just out of this world. But right now, it's, as we've been saying for the last year, it's like an intern. You need to check everything.
Oh my goodness. You've got that idea in my head now. And I've come up with one already. You can add to your list. This is free.
Go on.
Closing Time by Semisonic.
Oh, what a great tune. I saw that in a movie recently, actually. I remember which one it was. Anyway, great shit. Anyway, listen, let's move on. We have, let me see, we've got the solar capital of Ireland, and then we've got a little bit about back to school. Which one do you want to go with?
Sure. Let's go to solar capital of Ireland, because this is kind of interesting. New report by Energy Efficiency Ireland. If you want to read a little bit more about it, it's on techcentral.ie. But okay, which is the solar capital of Ireland, and which county is doing better than all the others? So okay, let's have a think about this. Given the population distribution across Ireland, which county do you think is going to have the most solar installations, as in most people deciding to get the solar panels on the tops of their houses?
Okay. Now,
in
can I ask,
Ireland?
do you mean by the actual number of people, or are you talking about like a percentage or an X amount per capita?
Raw number.
Raw number. It would have to be Dublin because most people are in Dublin. So, boom.
Of course. Dublin. 3,014 installations over the first 7 months of the year. That's actually pretty good. That's a lot of traffic going on. Okay, so let's make things a little bit more interesting. So let's go down to that per capita figure, Dusty, that you raised. Okay. So, based on the number of people in a county, and this is a figure gathered by the census, how do we put together the sort of rate of penetration or the number per 10,000 in each county, and who's doing pretty well and who's doing not so well? So, according to the figures, and I'll let you sort of guess what the actual number per 10,000 is on this. Okay. Which county did we say is the solar capital?
Dublin.
It's no. Dublin is not the solar capital because its per capita is actually quite low compared to everyone else.
Please, so never get into statistics. You'll be terrible.
It's actually the fifth worst in the country per capita. However, the most popular, the best per capita.
Okay, per capita. Okay, so this is the X amount per 10,000. Yes,
X amount per 10,000 is Meath, County Meath.
Well County done. Meath. County Meath. County.
Yep. Followed by County Louth.
Okay.
And then we've got.
So is it a lot? Is it? So for every 10,000 people in County Meath, how many have had an installation in the first 6 months of the year?
Yeah. So we've got 36.14 installations. For the first 7 months of the year.
Okay.
Right, that's per 10,000. Louth in second place, 35.52. So a little bit of a drop off there. Yeah. Clare, 34.93 installations per 10,000. So not as big a drop off there. And then Wexford in fourth place, 33.94 installations per 10,000 people. So kind of interesting.
There we go. Numbers. Do you know anybody who's had solar electricity put into their house?
No, but you know what? There is an awful lot of interest in people upgrading their homes because people are moving less because homes are more expensive. Yeah. So I'm seeing more and more people are doing things like getting the wraparound, getting their heat pumps in, that kind of thing. People are much more willing to invest in their houses because they've come to the realization that, look, we're going to be here a bit longer than we would have thought. So we are seeing much bigger uptake and interest in becoming much more energy efficient and getting your BER rating up. I mean, I know it's something that I've got a problem with at the moment that I need to improve, and indeed it's something that I'm going to invest in. So, do you want to find out the top 5 worst?
Oh, well, go on. In the interest of balance, of course.
In the interest of balance. Okay. The fifth worst, and I said this already, per capita, is Dublin at 22.04 per 10,000 people, followed by Cavan at 20.3, followed by Donegal at 19.6, followed by Monaghan at 18.98. What's interesting here is that the dips are actually, they seem much, much greater than the actual sort of differences at the opposite end of the scale.
Yeah, so there's like a full numbers in between. So what was that last one?
Monaghan at 18.98.
18.
And the top, the worst, if you will,
the top worst
county in Ireland for installations per 10,000 people is Longford at 16.08.
My sister-in-law lives in County Laois, and when they moved into the house there about 3-4 years ago, they decided to go with solar panels on the roof.
Yeah.
And I thought they were nuts, okay? Because, I mean, hello, it's Ireland. What do we see when we look up most of the time? Cloud. We never see sun. But, of course, these solar panels do work even through clouds, so that's good. But the result is, she said, it costs a lot of money to get in, but now she uses electricity like a mad one, all right? Telly's on all day. She's got the heating is all electric, which she has on all day, all night during the winter, blah, 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 blah. She would be a fairly heavy user of electricity, she thinks. And she said her bill is either zero or close to zero.
Just by virtue of using the solar panels.
Just by virtue of using the solar panels. Amazing.
That is pretty amazing.
And, yeah. So, I mean, that was just something that came up in the last, I can't remember when we were down, 3-4 weeks ago, whatever. But I would need to talk to her more in detail before considering taking it on myself. Yeah, I mean, that's a terrific report, isn't it? Can you imagine if every house in Ireland, can you imagine if every house in the world just had, can you imagine if roofs everywhere were just made out of solar panels? I mean, how much would that reduce the overall electricity requirement for people?
Oh yeah, and we're seeing things like excess heat from data centers being used to heat houses. There's a pilot scheme out in Tala at the moment doing that. I think there's another one somewhere else in the country now, but I can't remember exactly. I was watching a documentary about food distribution and sort of the big concerns about famines around the world, and the point was made that look, there's no problem with, growing food. There's enough food for everybody. The problem is distribution and inequality. And that's what leads to famine and hunger and starvation. So it's not the lack of food, it's poor distribution. And I think we're going to see that with energy. There's no lack of, sources for alternative energy. It's just the distribution and the infrastructure is what's holding us back. Yeah,
it's true. It's sad. And that's a quirk. Well, I won't say a quirk. It's one of the downsides of humanity, I think. Anyway, I live in that Star Trek world where we'll have it all sorted out in 500 years. Last story for today. Back to school. It's another survey, as you say, because, they're the three words. At this time of the year, these are the three words every parent loves. Back to school.
Loves to
my
hear.
God.
I remember growing up. August always had that cloud over my head, and you'd go and buy the stationery for the year, and it's just you're on your last legs. You had a good run of it this summer, but now it's things are going to get real in 4 weeks' time, and so
there's a story going around, and actually I don't think that this is a story. I think it's the same story being told in a different way. And the story is that parents are feeling pressure because it's back to school time and the technology that they have to buy their kids. All right?
Yeah.
So
and
they're thinking, we've got to get them tablets, we've got to get them laptops and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying that I don't empathize with these people, because what I'm saying is back to school is always a terrible time financially for parents.
Yes.
Okay?
And it could be anything.
Exactly. But before we had tech and tablets and laptops, you had to go and buy a bloody library of books, which were expensive in themselves, as well as the uniform and the yada yada, and then all the extracurricular activities and the yada yada. And it just gets on and on and on. Guess what percentage of parents are feeling pressure, financial pressure, with return to school?
Oh dear. Oh, okay, go on.
88%.
Pretty much everyone.
Pretty much everyone. It's terrible, isn't it? But
would you say the remaining 12 just don't care? Just get the kids out of the house.
What's the kids now? I'll pay anything.
Take them.
I think in the defense of tablets and laptops and stuff like that is that it does make the cost of the learning material, as in the content, an awful lot cheaper, which also means then that it's kept more up to date and they're able to do more with the tech and so on and so forth. So I think it balances out. And then the other thing is, like when we were going to school, you would have bought secondhand books. Refurb tech is amazing. And especially for school stuff. Do you know what I mean? They're not doing anything huge, watching some videos. It's mostly text and websites and whatever, So they're not doing any horsey kind of heavy processing or anything on it, so kind of getting an older laptop, like something that's 2 years old, 3 years old, perfect. Same with a laptop,
And of course, thanks to the EU, we have the right of repair, which covers us for 7 years, bearing in mind that what is it? You'll be 6 years in secondary school. You're basically covered for your entire period there.
True. And then the other thing is you've got the whole recycling thing. Do you know what I mean? So why are we taking all this good tech that is still good? It's still good for kids. Boom. Why are we chucking that stuff in the bin? Give it to the kids and let them use it. And I think and then I thought, I don't want to be the kid in school who's got the older laptop. All right. But then again, I'm going back to, it's a different time, I know, but in years gone by, kids would have had secondhand school books, or they would have had secondhand uniforms, or would have been all hand-me-down. And do you know what? Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Nobody
and,
cared.
The added value of getting a secondhand book and having all the important stuff highlighted.
Yes. And you can't do that with the darn tablets, can you?
Can't do that with a tablet.
Modern technology. We think we have it all, and then we realize, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Niall, thanks for keeping us up to date with all the news this week, as always.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006. This is Tech Radio.
Doctors, solicitors, dentists are all professions that have had as much to contribute to the character of a place or a town or a village or a city as the people who live there. Another example is bank managers, once upon a time a key part of society. However, the banking sector is now leaning more on automation, and we're seeing fewer branches and fewer managers to go with them. Michael Dowling is a professor at DCU, and he's hoping to change this by co-founding BankSeek, which uses generative AI to bring back some of that sense of human contact with banking. But does it work? We had a chat with Niall Kitson.
Michael, sometimes in covering a lot of AI startups, there's a sense that there are people on the cutting edge, but there's an awful lot of trend chasing going on as well. Your involvement in AI is, to say the least, long-standing, I suppose. Nobody could accuse you of trend chasing.
Well, yes, I was since about 2015 when I moved to a French business school as director of an AI center, essentially working with AI engineers and translating their work into business applications. I guess part of that is the diversity across a business school of what are the business needs, and then the AI engineers on the other side, and trying to match the both. I think there's no harm in trend following, though. I think it creates a sense of excitement. People who are kind of deep into AI can glory in their advanced knowledge, but probably are turning up at the demos in the likes of Dogpatch, listening to some of the trend followers and going, well, actually, there's a gem of usefulness there. So I think it's a happy mixture, really, and the last thing you'd want to be is in another AI winter where just a few old grey-haired professors are talking about it. It's much better that there's a mixture of excitement and hype and reality in AI.
Did you find that experience of working with engineers informed the ideas that you've sort of taken with you back to BankSeek?
So, well, BankSeek is a collection of specialized AI models that have been fine-tuned in order to meet the needs of SMEs for financial assistance. What we have there then is we have really very specialized AI techniques in terms of creating the systems of agents that can speak to each other, and that's our team consists of those engineers who are creating these models. But the big thing is how do we get the end user to actually engage with the product, and that's not an AI problem. This is a classic problem going back to to biblical times, trying to sell fruit in a market. It's what does the audience want? How will they engage with the product? How will it meet their needs more than an alternative product? And I suppose it's the blend of the techniques that are critical. You can see this in a broader sense. You look at the countries that are some of the highest producers of AI patents, and yet aren't translating that into business application. I think that's particular Irish expertise, really, when you look at our startup scenes, that what we tend to do is to focus on where is the solution, what is the actual problem, rather than the glory of the technology itself, which is hugely important. But it's going to become increasingly less important compared to the needs of the end customer. And there was a Goldman Sachs report, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, which was talking about the hundreds of billions that have been invested into AI so far, with quite limited returns to date, which is not unexpected, given that the payoffs for these types of projects might be over a few years. But one of the problems pointed out in that Goldman Sachs report is really that people are some extent over enamored by the technology and haven't thought enough about the use cases, and that's where the value always is. So that's our focus as well.
That does seem to be an ongoing source of, I suppose, creative tension. Is what can we do and how can we do it, and the order in which those two perspectives present themselves. I suppose in banking, we've gotten used to a gradual automation of the sector over the last few years, whether it's been dealing with online portals or even now walking into branches and having, not so much counters as there being a greeter who can pretty much handle everything, and an ATM that can handle your cash, etc. So how did you look to apply those sort of principles of automation while also looking for the best in things that people do still want in a bank, which I suppose would be the option of having that human contact?
Yeah, so my research has always been about behavioral finance and how people interact with money, how people interact with investment. I never really concentrated on the difficult numbers, the difficult maths, more about what do people want from finances, and then how does that then affect financial behavior. And that was the approach here as well. I mean, essentially over quite a lot of discussions with SMEs, with banks, with colleagues, with ex-students, and really I came back to the idea of growing up in Ennis, and I think at some point I was unsure whether or not to go to college, and my dad spoke to the local bank manager, and he said, look, the payoffs from college are just immense. But I was the first of the family to go to college, so it was maybe obvious, but it wasn't known to me. But that idea of the bank manager the bank manager then eventually put forward a loan to support going to college. But that idea of the bank manager who just had this 360-degree view of the world, who was gathering up tidbits of information everywhere and could just dole them out, and fundamentally it all linked back to needing to make loans to make profit, but the role was much more than transactional. And that image really is is how we are centering BankSeek for small businesses. It's this 360-degree, deeply personalized financial advisor who knows you, who's not just there when you want to take out a loan, but just when you want to check an idea. And so that's kind of how we approach this from a personal perspective of what is missing from banking, or really what's missing, even removing the banks, what's missing from the financial situation of small businesses. They're often they're the backbone of Irish society, all of EU society, most of the world's society, but they're often people who are alone. They have employees, but they are making life or death decisions that affect not just their business, life or death decisions that affect not just their business, but actually their ability to support their families. It's a very stressful situation, and we wanted to envisage a central support that could essentially step in, like that traditional local community bank manager used to occupy that role, and could just always be there. So it's not just you want to take out a loan, and there's a few startups in the space. You want to take out a loan, well, here's the thing that will aggregate all loans. That's very transactional again. It's just replacing one transaction with another type of transaction, but really a form of personal business intelligence that you can communicate with. You can seek advice, and it doesn't have to be purely financial. If you, for example, if you want to understand, should I upgrade the fridges in my delicatessen? Well, it'll come back and it'll look at your financial flexibility in your accounts, but it will also gather information that we'll have trained the models on things like that. If you get better than B-rated fridges, then you can write off the full costs in the full year. So we would integrate things like the Revenue Commissioner guidance, SEAI guidance, all of that information. That's all freely available under EU duplication laws, and bringing it all into one place, because really that's what the person wants. They don't want to, when they go to a bank and go, I'm thinking of doing this, really all the bank is saying to them is, well, we can do that or we can't do that. But the fundamental question for somebody who's running a business by themselves, making these critical decisions, is should I do it? And that's something that often people have no one to turn to. So trying to bring this idea back, like I was able to get back in my whether to go to college or not days quite a while ago. Yes, so that's the idea that we're aiming at.
In looking then at the idea of the bank manager as the pillar of the community, the shoulder to cry on, as well as the I suppose the arbiter or somebody with the ability to say go or no go to your idea, whether or your business decision or your decision to go on to higher education, as you yourself had. How do you manage to replicate that element of personality in BankSeek, that people will get that sense of, the strong community, the good user experience that will enhance trust in the product?
Well, I suppose I'll answer it maybe in a technical sense first, and then hopefully try to make the story a bit richer. But we're centering BankSeek around physical object that you can always talk to. To create a sense of physically embodied intelligence, a sense of presence that will react when you speak to it. This will then seamlessly be integrated with like mobile, so you can continue the conversation in the car, and desktop dashboards and everything like that. But the idea is you can just be in a room by yourself and start a conversation, and you'll get a response. So you're not having to wait until the next day or log into your bank and try to work it out for yourself, that you can send a request, and BankSeek itself will then run sets of codes that maybe are generating, let's say in the example I gave about the fridge example, it might come back with, you can request that it will send you a report to your email about this, just so you have all the information all in one place. And that's a separate type of output. So you have the conversational output, the voice-based output, but then you have the more structured output in the back, where it's analyzing your transactions, it's analyzing its data to produce formal output. In terms of the voice interaction, though, and I think this is the critical bit of creating engagement, is suppose there's been one or two products that have already been launched in different circumstances. One is called Pi, which stands for personal intelligence, and this is used for a lot of people as a self-therapy app, where you can have a conversation with it. It's been trained to be empathetic, and it's been trained in the right types of responses. So you can create fine-tune voice-based models that can be the right type of empathy. Plus also decisiveness. A big problem with current AI models is they are excessively people-pleasing, and that they don't want to tell you that something is wrong. And the best advisors we all have in any aspect of our lives are people who sometimes tell us something is wrong, something that we're thinking of doing isn't the right decision. So training in that level of decisiveness is a big thing, and providing with the right level of information on all the various resources, so not just banking. So at its heart, then the product will use open banking to access transactional information. This will then feed into models that can rigid machine learning models that can correctly analyze financial positions and run financial analysis. But the main way of interacting is, like we're doing now, is face to face. And before this interview, I was even just, I don't do this type of talking much. So I did feed in some information about BankSeek and about yourselves into the voice version of ChatGPT, and asked it to interview me in the same way as you might. Now, as it turns out, it wasn't great. your questions are slightly different, but it's it's a bit of a brave new world, where you can kind of role play this type of thing. You can have, when I was having that conversation with the voice version of ChatGPT, it felt like an interview. I felt nervous. I felt it was understanding what I was talking about, and what we're doing as well, of course, is not just thinking about where the tech is now, because just that would be the easiest way to not launch, but to think about where the tech will be in 12 months' time, where we know it's going to be much more instantaneous. It's going to be much more personalizable, and then on top of that we add our own sets of codes, which work for the Irish banking context.
And that was Michael Dowling, a professor at DCU, chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Some more stories actually online that we didn't manage to squeeze into the podcast, including what, Niall?
Yeah, we're looking at the average cost of a data breach in 2024. Entries open for the STEM Southwest Awards, that's the first, and how gamers really feel about their favourite hobby.
You'll find all of those and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again, of course, next Friday with a brand new show online and on RT Radio 1 Extra. And do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just time to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now on YouTube as well. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.